Hello and welcome back to another session on the Smart Stage. Joining me today, all the way from Europe, Switzerland, is Matt Harris, CEO and Conduco. Now, Matt is here to talk to us about contactless technologies. Matt is actually a partner of ours at Event Tech Live. I will be powering a number of different technologies across our show, really integral part of our event. But he's going to be talking today about how tech can be used to keep attendees and exhibitors safe, but still interact with each other. I'm sure something that is top of mind for us all as we move back to hybrid events and bring back people physically. Matt, welcome to the session.
Thank you, and thanks for the introduction, Adam. It's good to
No
see you
problem
again.
at all, mate. It is
Yeah,
good to see you as well, mate. Hopefully soon in a bar somewhere where we can have a beer together. So I know you've got a lot to talk about, and I'll be back on for questions at the end, but the floor is yours. Look forward to hearing what you have to say.
thanks. Okay, guys, thanks for the introduction, Adam. I've been in the event industry, just by a bit of background to what I'm going to talk about today, for 20 years. Building software, integrating platforms, and trying to invent some things as well. But where I come from is from a place of accessibility and disability access to the web. And I'm trying to build and promote tech that is accessible to everybody. And the ultimate aim is just not around disability access or making tech accessible, but it's also about the data capture, building business models around tech and implementations that can be used by everybody. But at the heart of where I'm coming from is the attendee. I'm obsessed by the attendees. And since starting Conduco 8 years ago, we've really focused on how can we model or create not only a tech capability, but also a business and implementation model where organizers at large can get everything they want. They can get data, they can get happy exhibitors, and they can get new revenue. I do have some slides to show you. I haven't intended to or want to create this sort of a death by PowerPoint type situation, but some of the things I want to talk about are best visualized and depicted so that they can be actually quantified. But I'll keep moving through now. Contactless and contactless technologies, it's quite an odd thing I find, or an odd situation that we find ourselves in our industry, because in our B2C lives, we're completely surrounded by it. You know, we have the ability to pay with our phones, we can jump on the bus through contactless, we can collect information digitally, we can share information digitally, but within our B2B world, this is just a new and emerging concept that's really only sort of jumped out into sort of public discussion because of COVID and health and safety issues. But the fact is that contactless capability has been around, for a long time, and it's something that we should have always been doing, as a collective group. In trying to paint the picture of what my view on contactless technology is this scene in Pretty Woman, and I'm sure a lot of the people listening have seen the movie before, and remember the quote that Julia Roberts said here. It was, "Big mistake, such a big mistake." And going or not going contactless is a huge mistake for our industry. And it's for the same reasons which are depicted here. Julia's experience was one of someone made an assumption, looked her up and down, and decided not to provide a service because she didn't feel like it was fit for purpose. And I feel like our industry is almost in exactly that same place at the moment. But the benefits of it far, far outweigh anything that we can imagine. By having happy attendees, we create data. By creating data, lots of data, we can do lots of things with it, such as predict the life of our event, we can keep our exhibitors happy, and we can create new business models and revenue opportunities. But if we actually rip and stare everything back, the one thing that sits here is putting the attendee first, and it's so crucial. This is a photo that one of my team members took at a show a few years ago, or 2 photos, and it's what we see at every show. We see this at our shows, we see this at other shows. And if this isn't the attendees telling us or sending us such a strong message that what we're doing is not good enough, then I don't know what is. It's very clear that people don't want to collect brochures, in paper format. They don't want to be walking around doing things inefficiently, that there is a new trend evolving here. And many brands in the world have fallen foul by not really listening to what people are telling them, whether it's through spoken word or their actions, and they've failed every time. It's true that what we're doing right now, particularly in the US, and obviously this is a US conference, the existing business model is broken. The notion that someone would stand there with an app and a salesperson and scan people either to get their information or to deliver materials electronically is absurd. This photo I actually took, and that's Razvan, who's a VP of operations at Conduco. This is an event in Dubai. And we were walking around the show like we do at any show, talking to the exhibitors. We want to understand what their experience is, what we can do better. And this lady, the host, selling, no doubt, a building, jumped in, grabbed his badge to scan it. And I was able to actually take this photo in action. And for me, this represents everything that's wrong with how we're interacting at trade shows these days. Engagement, interaction, and experiences should not be led by some type of sales objective to get people to get information. Someone once said to me recently this quote, and I think it's fascinating, and that is that consumers, including B2B attendees, don't want to be sold to, but they do want to buy. And there's so much in that quote which we can think about as we go through this presentation. But before we get into some of the outcomes, here's just a couple of examples of contactless tech that exists out there at the moment. And this is really just to tick a few boxes to say that it exists. We have the sort of self-serve touchless kiosks that we're starting to see become more common. And these are amazing because they're faster, they're more efficient, they're cheaper to deploy. They offer sort of a self-serve experience that gets people in the front door. First impressions are great without, massive queuing and delaying people getting into the main game. And that sort of customer-centric approach is what we're really striving for. But this is really where that contactless experience starts. And of course, in this post-COVID world where we're talking about health and safety, we've really got a couple of different options. We can get rid of badges altogether. We can rely on digital tickets and registration, which were spoken about a bit earlier, or we can go through the self-serve sort of approach that's depicted here. The second example is sort of passive engagement or passive contactless. An example here is the co-locator beacons provided by Crowd Connected. Of course, these are one of many companies out there where attendees can use an app, they can gather information, data is sent from their phone up into the cloud in real time, and we can do lots of stuff around it, like understanding people's dwell time and starting to try and measure people's behavior and intent based on where they're sort of moving around the show. The other type of technology on this screen is the Conduco technology, and that is an active technology. And that's where the attendee, optionally at their own discretion, gives their information to whoever is actually utilizing the actual device. It could be an exhibitor or a speaker, the organizer for door tracking, so on and so forth. But contactless for me is not a technology. And before, when I said that accessibility and technology that's available to all is really at the heart of what we're trying to do here. Technology is really just the conduit to actually get the outcome that we want. In a nutshell, though, in relation to contactless, it is really the experience that we're after, and that's what events are all about. This is another photo I took at an event a couple of years ago, and there was a lady using the augmented reality experience on the booth, and I said to the exhibitor after the lady left, what are you doing here? For me, this looks like expensive and difficult to implement, and how do you come up with a whole creative concept? And she said, to be honest, what we've learned is that the attendees don't want to listen to me do my sales spiel. If they actually manage to walk on the booth, they've made that first decision, yes, there's something interesting here. But if I can just let that person explore and engage, even for 30 seconds or 60 seconds, in understanding what it is that we do through some type of immersive experience that's really simple to do, you just hold up a camera and the content is there, then 3/4 of my job is done. And this is, for me, at the heart of actually creating an engaging attendee experience. Using contactless technologies, that's adding so much more value to the sales process. But the experiences where attendees can self-serve is really where I think that contactless technology comes alive. I really believe at the heart of almost every person that participates in this industry that there is an introvert in us. And certainly the attendees that come to a trade show, as soon as they walk in those 4 walls of the building, if they weren't an introvert prior, they certainly have a high probability of becoming one. And that's because they don't want to be sold to. They want to look, they want to discover, they want to experience, they want a tactile sort of touch and feel experience. And then once they've actually made the decision to advance towards either speaking to somebody or requesting that content digitally, then half of the job is done. They're already engaged. And so some of the cool things that we're starting to see out there now is how can you actually take that what was previously sort of an augmented experience and turning it into a sort of a 3D product walk around. The example here provided to me by Hugo Virtual, which is a company in the US, is what they're doing with QR codes. And those QR codes get placed on products. It could be a miniature version of the product, and then someone can sort of, come back and zoom and see it and walk around and feel like they're actually looking at the product in real time. The other on the other side, of course, is Conduco, my company. And this is one of our most popular attendee engagement experiences off the attendee booth. We call it a promo wall or a conference wall, or post-COVID, it's called an exhibitor not present wall, where attendees can go and self-serve and receive information digitally so that then they can look at it and decide if they want to actually go ahead and proceed with that conversation. But I've said these words that I'm saying to you to many of my sales opportunities. Let the attendees sort of consume the information first before you let the exhibitors pounce. And their first response is, well, the exhibitors are not going to like that. It's completely wrong. And this is not what trade shows are all about. The trade show is about satisfying the exhibitor and everything that they can do. And I think that's completely wrong. And to illustrate sort of what I'm talking about in sort of understanding where contactless capabilities and allowing attendees to sort of self-serve and collect information from the show, either through their mobile device or a smart badge, is best illustrated by this example. And what I've done is I've pulled the data from about 50 events that we've done and summarized it in a very simple example. So imagine that there was a show with 500 exhibitors, a trade show, and 10,000 attendees. These numbers are the type of outcome that you can expect. So if there's an organizer on the call, this could actually form as a business case for you to justify an investment in an experience that is utilizing contactless technologies. The most obvious number that stands out is how much money the exhibitors would save by no longer printing materials or investing in visual signage and stuff that was really quite offline. And I spoke to a guy I know here in Geneva who owns a printing company, and he used to, until recently because of COVID, provide print service to exhibitors coming to Pal Expo, which is a Geneva exposition center. And on average, for a 500 exhibitor event, exhibitors would save 1.75 million US dollars. And that's the low end of the spectrum that he gave me. That's where the exhibitors are spending, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 each. But one thing is for sure with utilizing contactless technologies, breaking the old business model from where exhibitors are selling scanners or using scanners to scan attendees to allowing attendees to actually collect information digitally from around the show, everywhere around the show, just not booths. Organizers can expect to create around $200,000 of revenue from those 500 exhibitors. Maybe a little bit less in the first year, but certainly by the third year, it will be much more than the $200,000. Now, in talking about the attendees and allowing them to self-serve, to collect information. So when the attendees are collecting information with their phone or badge or bracelet or other device they have, they're also giving the information back to where they've collected it from. And because of the convenience of that, because people are already used to doing that in their B2C world, we see and have seen frequently, no matter if it's an agricultural show or an avant-garde design show, at least a 6 times higher increase in data that's created from a 6 times increase in attendee engagement, which ultimately leads to a significantly large uplift in leads for exhibitors, which of course, ultimately at the end of the day, that's what you want. You want the exhibitors to be getting leads so they pay the money to come back each year. Now, we've been trying to understand the business over the years and say, why is this working? Why does that not work? And one thing that we've absolutely understood completely clearly, that is, if you provide a service to the attendees, everything just happens like a domino. And independent research in some of the shows that we've done has shown that exhibitor satisfaction measured by the NPS score system is at least 70 or above, and that attendees, when surveyed, either by ourselves or independent market researchers or those put in place by the organizer, show over 80%, sometimes as high as 95% of attendees want to use contactless technologies. And at the end of the day, what this actually leads to is what everybody's been talking theoretically. And with contactless technologies, it's not a theory, it's a reality right now. That's data and data and data that just comes in volumes. But another way of looking at this is sort of comparing the old world with the new world, in my world. And that is that this is a real case study of an event, and that on the left-hand side there is 6,429 leads captured from using an app capability in the hands of the exhibitors. And this is not a super low number. This is like an average sort of 30% penetration of the exhibitors generating some leads. When contactless technology was put in, allowing the attendees to collect information by themselves, to browse and discover, we increased it to 43,000 leads captured that year. That's a 500% odd increase. And then in the second year of utilizing the technology where there's mostly the same exhibitors, the same attendees returned, that number doubled. Generating almost 1,200% increase in data captured from the show floor just by reversing the model for how people interact with each other. And I do struggle, with why our industry. why our industry is not actually embracing this stuff more often, because it's a no-brainer. This is what our attendees want. It's what everybody wants. To sum it up, though, in very sort of simple sort of picture, put attendees first. Attendees will create lots of data, which will make the exhibitors happy. Then they will spend more money, which is what the organisers want. And the entire ecosystem can be summed up for me in these basic 3 rings. And it's not any more complex than that. You know, if an organiser wants to sort of move down a machine learning path, then that's possible because you've got all the data to do so. If you want to start to move down into predictive analytics or looking at understanding customer intent or all of these sort of more sophisticated things that you can do, it now becomes a possibility, all because you've put the attendee first. And finally, just to sum it up, in conclusion, to sort of break down the possibilities into what can you expect up front versus what you can expect in sort of the second year results, you can almost guarantee, I can almost guarantee you that you will be able to achieve these results by starting to adopt a contactless mindset in implementation by putting the attendee first. The attendees will love it, for sure. And because they love it and they're satisfied, they will be using the capability, which will make your exhibitors happy. You will generate new revenue streams, and it's not a theory, and sometimes significant revenue streams. And the data that you capture will be at a very granular level. You can match people's interest with products and services with much precision because everybody's using it. I didn't put up any dashboards up to show you, but you know, the reporting capability of what you can get from the data is extraordinary. But the one thing that, as an organizer, you can absolutely measure, and that is that you will be able to sign up your exhibitors on the spot or in a much faster time frame than you've ever been able to do before, because people are happy, the data is actually supporting the arguments that they mount towards you, and it's all evidence-based, and with everybody being satisfied, it becomes a much easier conversation. You know, from the second year, you know, things take time to implement. Depending on how sophisticated you are or how far you wanted to go, you know, predicting what's going to sell at the next show, having absolute clarity on what people are buying, seeing the trends, removing that content that's not actually drawing any attention and bringing in new ideas, that's all going to be evidence-based now because of the data. And finally, you know, getting a higher yield or more money per square foot is absolutely something that you'll be able to achieve by actually starting to look at the data that you create. And so just to do that full circle, back to, you know, how we got onto this topic, and that is that contactless works. You know, give it a shot, and hopefully we're sort of walking down out of the show, not with the bags that she has, because I'm trying to tell you to get rid of them, but at least with a smile on her face, because the experience has been wonderful, and that's because I've been in control of it. That's it, Adam. Thank you.
Well, mate, you don't need to convince me. I've been a big fan of using technology like yours at our events for years. We, you know, from the first year that we worked with you, we instantly saw an uptick in everything that you said there. Leads generated, contacts and information exchange between attendees, a higher visitor satisfaction and a higher exhibitor satisfaction. And I must admit, before we go on to questions, when I now go to an event and my badge isn't enabled for me to collect things easily from the show floor, it almost becomes laborious, and I almost don't want to talk to some people and go up to some stands, because I'm like, I just want to tap. You know, that exhibit might be busy, or you know, that it just might not be the right time for me to get into a conversation. But I still want to exchange. I'm still happy to give that exhibit my contact details because it's relevant. But you know, it's just so jarring now when I don't go to events, and the fact that organisers can make good revenues out of it. it just blows my mind that more organisers don't utilise this technology, because I really can't see a downside. I'm not just saying that because you're a partner, and I'm not just saying that because you're good friends and stuff. It literally blows my mind. Why do you think more organisers don't use this technology, just out of interest? Is it just that they're slow to adopt? Is it, do they not want to invest up front? What do you think?
Um, the the biggest inhibitor to adoption in the US, at least, is the existing business model, and that is where um, technology that's provided to the show floor, particularly the exhibitors, is subsidising registration fees, and
Right.
so that it's a business model constraint that's slowly being undone little by little by some companies like ours and others out there. Uh, but that's the business model. It's broken, and there are a few companies out there who are leading the charge to really shake that up. But in the first year, they need to invest. The second reason is that there is a perception that it's difficult. There were a couple of false starts, 3 or 4 years ago where things didn't go well, and like you with the virtual platform, you had a baptism of fire. We've all been through that, and things are settled down now. It's really easy to implement this stuff now. So if there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah, I know what you mean, mate. There's definitely a subset of the industry that is willing to pave the way, as I would call it. It's willing to take some risks and learn, trial and invest. But then they tend to be the organisers that come out on top, have the competitive advantage, have the better events, have the better, the better rebook, which is part of what we use your technology for. It really, the data's there on you can have good conversations with exhibitors about the attendees that they've collected information from, the lead numbers, which is what exhibitors ultimately focus on, right? They're looking at, investment into the event and leads out an ROI a little bit later. So it's that initial kind of like, well, how much have I got from this event right now? One of the small questions I want to ask you is just around strategy when it comes to implementing something like your technology into an event. Like, how do they introduce that to an exhibitor who might already feel like they're paying enough for the stand and all of that kind of stuff? Have you got any examples of really successful campaigns by organisers of introducing that and getting the exhibitor to embrace the technology and invest in it themselves?
Yeah, there's only really one way to do it, and that is to talk to the exhibitors. And uh, what our customers are doing in talking to the exhibitors, saying, look, you've come here, you receive 100 leads for the show, but if you will adopt this type of enhanced technology, it's not a change, it's not a complete different way of doing things, it's an enhanced technology, you'll still get your first 100 leads, but you'll also get another 100 on top of that. And
Okay.
it's also not going to cost you any more money. And they're like, oh, okay, cool, love it. And that's the way to sort of get the message in. But the other way of actually talking about it is, it's just not about the salesperson selling to the attendee now. It's about letting the attendee use their phone, use their badge. They can use their bracelet. They can use, depending on the implementation, whatever tech they want. And it's so flexible that it allows organisers now to support all of these different things. Back in the accessibility world, sort of going back 20 years, we used to say people should be able to collect and access information any way they choose. And that's obviously driven by people with motor disorders or vision impairments or hearing or whatever. But it's also choice now. There's so many different ways you can do things that you don't just have to force people to use one. And that's the great thing about contactless tech.
Yeah, absolutely agree. We do have another couple of questions here, but I think you answered one of them already. The question was, can attendees use their phones instead of a badge? And I think you've covered that off just recently in that question there. Another comment: wall is a great idea for virtual exhibitors. I think they said attendees, but I think they mean exhibitors. Somebody else saying great session, thank you. A polarizing question here. how is this tap solution better than a contact me please button in a mobile event app that accomplish the same results? What
All
would you
right. So
say to that?
at the risk of putting oil on the fire, apps. I'm an app guy. Apps are amazing. There's so much in there, and you can do so much with them. But people need to come to terms with the fact that there is no consumer demand for apps en masse to get any real benefit. And 10 years ago, it was because apps are too heavy, it's too expensive to run, download speeds. And next year, the argument is going to be, I don't want to use my phone at the show because I don't want to waste the battery because I've got my bus ticket on it. There's no consumer demand. There's not enough consumer demand with an app, even though the capability is there, to actually build something on scale that we're talking about here. If you only want 20 or 30%, 40%, or sometimes in conferences 80% data, then it's the right solution. But if you're looking at taking this seriously across the board, an app is an enhanced experience, but not something that everybody wants to use.
I think that's a very fair point, mate. And I think, not that event apps don't have their place and aren't valuable to some events, they can be very valuable to some events, but the industry has struggled and had challenges for years when it comes to event app adoption, whereas nobody talks about the challenges of badge adoption at events, do it. Yes, you have the odd person that puts the badge away and they put it in the suitcase or, in the suit pocket or whatever, in their bag, whatever. But you can pretty much guarantee 99% of people walking around an event or show is having a badge. So that technology is there, it's in their hand, and it's very easy to use at the event to collect information and then the benefits that come with that. I think we've got time for one more question, mate.
Okay.
Does this technology expose any new trends captured during the pre-show registration journey? Sorry.
Almost every time. What people enter in the pre-registration process is it's not very useful. It's not quite accurate. Either the question's been asked the wrong way or there's not enough context. But what we do see once people start behaving, so it's either interacting with the platform pre-show or starting to collect information digitally at the show, you see a vast difference about what you learn. I'll give you a very simple example. Someone says they were interested in apples during the registration process, but at the show they were going to speak to exhibitors selling oranges. If you have enough data and using machine learning on that, you could probably draw a conclusion, understand their intent wasn't they were not interested in apples or oranges, they were actually interested in fruit salad. And so the data is revealing examples like that over and over and over again. But people's behavior when they're physically at the show is vastly different from what they say during the registration process or in the lead up to the show. And if you wanted to be controversial, you could almost do away with registration questions altogether and just 100% rely on their actions at the show, because the data that you get from that behavior is so valid and so strong.
Yeah, the registration data is just predominantly intent, right? It's what I think I might want to do. And sometimes it can be 6 to 8 weeks out from a show, so that's a lot of time for things to change and stuff.
But people,
and then yeah, go on.
No, I was going to say, as soon as you walk in the door at a show, you get there's all these sort of visual stimuli. Unless you're a complete sort of person who's very good at sticking to what they've planned. I know as soon as I walk in the door, the phone goes in the pocket and I'm off. It's like, who knows where I'm going to end up? And then I really only stop by the time my feet gets or I want a coffee or a cigarette,
Absolutely, mate. Well, that brings us nicely to the end of the session, mate. Thank you very much for joining us and giving us a vision of what a contactless event can be like and all the benefits that go along with that. For anybody that actually wants to see this happen in action, that maybe in Europe, please do come along to Event Tech Live UK. We are working with Matt and the team to power our event there, and if not, we will surely have a camera on site and be broadcasting and telling people and showing them exactly how it works. Matt, thank you for joining me so late for the event,
Thank
and to
you.
all the attendees, we will see you in the next session shortly.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Adam. Thanks, team. Bye.